The Curse of Toto'jé. Towards the end of the Age of Fire, the soul of the artisan creators rejoiced to see their dream take shape. They contemplated their works for a long time, while they decided how to fill the land of life, and what their forms would be, once they became the powers that descended upon Oldin. When each of them separated for the first time since they were gathered in the Gaul, fragmented to form thousands of spirits that would fill the earth. But, knowing that by separating, Oldin would be left alone and unprotected in the darkness of the great emptiness, they judged it necessary to leave behind one of them, so that he could watch over the world and return it to balance in case the darkness prevailed once more. Thus this one received the name of Arya, the solitary spirit left behind by all the others. In their haste to descend and experience their creation. A single light that shines like a torch in the middle of the great night. A pure and orphan soul in the emptiness and silence of the cow. The last force of the artisan creators, destined to see the centuries pass over the created earth until the fulfillment of its days. The Aryas descended on the old Oldin, flying and walking on the land of antiquity, decreased from their original astral state, as they penetrated the material world they had created, touching and feeling all matter, breathing the dry air. Satisfied and overwhelmed by their creation, they saw thousands of years pass, before the end of the Age of Fire, to make manifest their powers that be. At that time, within their soul, a strange and disturbing voice made itself heard. Like a faint and fleeting idea that moved them to despair, and an almost imperceptible desire for domination and ambition. But they were unable to find the origin of the corruption in their soul, for they were all as one, and until they were separated they couldn't identify Toto'jé, who had accompanied them from the cold cow. For this reason they lengthened the time of the First Age, trying to purge their essence of all evil. But, over time, that voice became clear and gained more strength and awareness. Even to upset the thoughts of the Aryas and sow fear in their heart. The fear of Toto'jé grew when the towns of Maya Toto'jé and Wontor were discovered in western Oldin, in the region now known as the Salt Sea. Raised by the will of the Dark Soul, who at last was manifested among them as the Lord of the Abyss. Stem of that insidious sting that touched the soul of Arya in the time of the Great Silence. Toto'jé woke up the elements and gave life to gigantic demons of rock, sand and fire. His great army, sent to deform the earth according to his desire. He tried to wage war against the Aryas and tried to persuade the wills of those who, because of the time lived in the material world, began to separate from the others, awakening with their own identity and thoughts. To take control of Oldin and rule everything, even in the way that darkness dominates in the great emptiness. Toto'jé assembled his armies in the great valley of the west. Enormous monsters of rock and destructive flames, and the sand serpents that dug and sprouted from beneath the earth. Two separate entities of the Aryas also united their wills to that of the Lord of the Abyss, taking the names Tat and Tam. Nevertheless, Arya's desire remained in them for the good of Oldin, but they were corrupted by the influence of the Dark Soul, and they embraced the ambition of taking the land and possessing it. But the love of the Aryas for Oldin was such, that they faced the enemies in the Valley of Salt, striking the forces of the demons of rock and fire, and shook the earth with a great earthquake, which sank the cities under an intense shower of salt and brimstone. There, they buried the demons with the ruins in the place that today they call the Dead City. The curse of Toto'jé that remains until this day. The other enemies fled and were pursued to the North Pole, where they hid under the earth, in ice caverns dug by sand snakes. But they were found by 5 valiant Aryas, who swore to see their dream come true, and captured them in the icy regions, where the world was already cooling, heralding the end of the era. There, Toto'jé and the 2 fallen bent their knees and swore obedience to the desire of Arya. Thus ended the first great battle in Oldin, among the pure spirits, and the powers that would take dominion of the earth, if their desire were fulfilled. In all these events, The solitary spirit of Kal was unable to intervene, since he vowed not to participate in the affairs of the material world, as long as there are forces that can face the darkness and maintain balance. But he commanded the Aryas not to wait any longer for the end of the age, for the waters and the future powers would bury the demons of antiquity under the new world. On that day, the solitary spirit of Kal was moved to compassion, seeing the broken soul of the Aryas in Oldin, which was beginning to cause division and havoc. He desired with all his heart to give his brothers a rest. So with his awesome power, and a fine movement of his hand, he opened doors from the physical world, to a new existential reality. The spiritual dimension, where the spirits could congregate in meditation, to cultivate the unity of their thoughts with the desire of Arya. And thus it was, the end of the first age.